Hi, sixth graders. Today we are going to look at population density and distribution as the first lesson in our unit. So make sure you've got those guided notes, and let's take a look at the learning target. So where the learning target at the top of your page, just jot this down. I can calculate population density. So you're going to write in calculate population density and understand patterns, put in the word patterns of population distribution, and then write in the word distribution. So we're looking at how to calculate population density, and then we're looking at patterns of where populations of people live in this lesson. All right, so it says at the top, do you think the world is overpopulated? I just want you to take a minute and pause and jot down if you think the world is overpopulated. Think about what overpopulated means. Think about what kind of things in the world would mean that there's an overpopulation. And then if you don't think it's overpopulated, tell why about that too, and tell how many people you think the earth might be able to support. So you can pause here, and then when you're ready, you can pick up and we'll get to the guided note. Welcome back. So we're going to take care of some vocab here, just to get you into what different vocab words are for studying population. So first, what is population? So number one, population is all the people who live in like a particular area. So everybody who lives in Northville would be the population of Northville. Everybody who lives in China would be the population of China. Secondly, we've got demographers. So demographers are social scientists that study population patterns and change. So looking at where do people live and why do people migrate and that type of thing. And so looking at those patterns, that's what you're going to be doing in this unit. So you are going to be the demographer this time. Okay, thirdly, we're going to look at population density. So if you look at this map and along this key over here, it says millions of people per kilometer squared. That is the population density. So if we look at these different shadings, a dark red here means 25 to 50 million people live in the darker areas. A lighter area is less than 1 million people. So that's where demographers kind of look for patterns. So if you look at number 3 on your guided notes, just put in population density is the number of people who live in a defined area. You can just write those words in. And then distribution is where do these populations live? So it's the pattern or spread of people in a given area. It's kind of like where, like notice here, if we look at South America, it looks like because the darker area means more concentrated numbers of people live there, looks like more people live along the coast than they do in the middle of the country. And so you might think, well, why is that? And that's something that a demographer might do. Okay, our last vocab word is cartogram. And a cartogram is a map that shows the population of countries, not necessarily the land area. So when we talked about our different maps that we looked at in an earlier unit, if you look here, look at the United States compared to Mexico. Now that's not the land area, we know that. This kind of looks funny to us, but if we think of it in terms of population, Central America here, including Mexico, has a much bigger population than the United States, and that's what this cartogram shows. So again, number 5 on your vocab, a cartogram is a map that shows the population of the countries, not the land area. And we'll be looking at some cartograms in this unit. All right, flip your notes over, and we're going to look at how to calculate population density, and it's pretty easy. You just take the total population of the people who live there, and you divide it by, I don't know if you can see in that division symbol, the total square miles. So, for example, if we looked at Michigan, Michigan has about 10 million people, and it has about 57,000 square miles. So you would divide those two numbers on a calculator, and it comes up to 177 people per square mile if we averaged it out through all of Michigan. New York City, on the other hand, has oh my goodness, has 8 million people, so less population, but that's just in the city, but only over 302 square miles. So if we divide that, 8 million, almost 9 million divided by 300 or 302, we get 29,778 people per square mile. Wow, that's a lot. But if you think of New York City, there's apartment buildings, so people are living in apartments. There's way more people who can live in one apartment building that will then live in one house. So if you think of suburbs in Michigan and farmland and that kind of thing, there's reasons for it. All right, from this point on, for a few times when you see the summarize in your notes, you're not going to write yet. You're just going to listen for a little bit, and I'll let you know when it's time to write back on your notes. So just listen for the next few slides. All right, so if we looked at population density in the United States, and this is by county, let's look at what we notice. So we notice again that the lighter color is less than 1 million people in that area. And then, or less than 1, and then 3,000 to 69,000 people per square mile in the darker areas. So if we looked for patterns, we notice over here on the eastern side, it's darker. There's a lot more dark, so it looks like more people live in more concentrated areas in this part of the United States than they do in the western area of the United States. There's a lot more of the lighter color where less than 1 person lives. So we'll be talking about reasons for that later. Look at Alaska up here. Lots of area where it's just very light and not very many people live. So kind of think about why that might be. Okay, another comparison. We're going to look at, these are the 10 most populated countries of the world, but we're going to look for a minute at China and Bangladesh. Now, China has 1.3 million people. That's what that means. Whereas Bangladesh only has 153,000. So a lot less people live in Bangladesh. But let's look at population density for a minute. China has a population density of 141 people per square kilometer. But Bangladesh has over 1,000 people per square kilometer. How is that when Bangladesh has such a much smaller population? So think about what you might think. Why might that be possible? Just think about it, and then let's move to the next slide, and we might see why. All right, so if we think of Bangladesh, Bangladesh is much smaller. So even though it has a smaller population, it's a way smaller area to live in, so more people are going to live there. China is big. It's a big country, so even though they have a lot of people, they're more spread out because they have more space to spread out in. If you think of, for example, if you think of like the number of kids, if we tried to stick the whole school in our classroom, that would be a high population density. But when we spread the whole school number of students out in the whole building, it's not as crowded. So that's kind of like what Bangladesh and China are, and that's kind of like population density. All right, why might China not have as many people? Well, let's take a look at where they're the most crowded. Again, so it's on the coast. In the center here, we've got what? We've got mountains. So a lot of people can't live on the mountains, right? And so that kind of tells where people might be located and why. It has to do with physical features of the country. And again, here's those mountains. So if we look at people per square mile, the darker colors indicate there's more people. Why? Because over here, there's mountains in China. Mongolia, same thing. The darker represents more people per square kilometer or square mile. Why? Why are they here? Why is there barely anyone in these light areas? Well, it's because they've got some mountains, they've got the Gobi Desert, nobody can live there. All right, so now we should be back to our notes page. I want you to summarize and just jot down these 3 ideas. So first of all, people are not evenly distributed, right? There might be more people living in New York City versus all of Michigan. Secondly, population density is the number of people who live in a given area. It's how many people are crowded into that area. And then distribution and density are related to geographical features, right? Mountains, deserts, whatever, and availability of resources, right? So if there's no water in an area, there's not going to be many people living there. Okay, so you can jot those down in the summary. If you need to pause, that's fine. And then the last thing, we're going to wrap it up. Why does population density matter? And I want you to think about what might be the effects of living in this in a crowded area. And I want you to jot this down as your wrap up. So think about what problems might develop when many people live in a small area. How might it affect people's quality of life? How might it affect the availability of resources? Think about all those things and just jot your answer. And then when you're done, you're going to show your notes packet to your teacher. And then move on to the next activity. That wraps it up.